Sometimes you just feel tired, feel weak. And when you feel weak, you feel like you want to just give up. But you gotta search within you. Try to find that inner strength and just pull it out of you. And get that motivation to not give up and not be a quitter. No matter how bad you want to just fall flat on your face.
Back on Andy McGuire's point, I think what he was talking about that day, and in that summary that he gave, and why the 515 is valid. What I think initially set him off to make these points was that he knew in London there was no physical metal to sell. Okay, it wasn't like you could step up that day and place an order for 100 tons. You know, that there were just all kinds of people lining up with physical metal to unload. There was none. But as you watch the trading of paper metal, there was 515 tons that were sold. And I think he was trying to make the connection to get people realize the lack of connection between the activity in paper metal versus the actual physical market. That's what he was trying to say. And if you go back and do the math, 515 tons is 16 million ounces, which is 160,000 contracts, which is about exactly what was traded in a 4-hour. It was. I mean, I think the total COMEX volume that day was 250,000. So 160,000 is about right.
Right.
So he had a point, and I think I was glad he went back and kind of explained, what that 515 was all about. But that anyway, to your point, that's exactly how they do it. That's how the manipulation works. They set off the triggers, get the cascade to generate its own momentum then from all of the, all the specs that follow, and then they step in and cover, and the cartel at the end of the day has no net change to their position.
Right. All right, well, why don't we touch on the Libor scandal here briefly. It seems to be widening here. We had Barclays executive finally resigning last night. What are your thoughts on, I'm interested to see, obviously the Libor market is vastly larger than the gold or silver market. I mean, we're talking, it controls, 350 trillion in interest rate swaps?
Yeah, that's an estimate that I've seen, yeah.
And I mean, an interview on CNBC over the weekend, they were both hosts basically were comparing they're agreeing that basically the silver markets were manipulated along with Libor. What do you think this huge Libor manipulation scandal will have an impact on as far as the market's awareness of the metals manipulation?
It doesn't hurt, Doc, that's for sure. In the end, I think it further damages the credibility of the banks. Now, again, I guess the hard part is it damages their credibility in my eyes and your eyes and the small percentage of people that are actually paying attention. If we're ever to really affect change, I mean, how many people have to be paying attention? I mean, does the guy driving down the street, driving home, listening to the announcer say on the radio that the stock market was up 80 points, is he paying attention? Is he looking at that going, those guys manipulated Libor? Oh, yeah.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, it speaks to the fact that everything, sadly enough, is now manipulated, and it's about perceptions. Whether it's Libor, whether it's any currency market, the forex, whether it's the treasury market, which is openly manipulated by the Fed now. That's what quantitative easing is, and Operation Twist and everything else that they do. Whether it's the equity market, where I think we all suspect strongly that they're in there almost every day trying to paint a picture to keep that Bernanke wealth effect going amongst the American populace, to all the way down to gold and silver. It just amazes me. And again, it makes you wonder about who's really just a paid shill by the cartel. Because if Forex is manipulated, and we know that. I mean, Bank of Japan, the Swiss National Bank, all these central banks manipulate their currency. So we know Forex is manipulated. We know the treasury market is manipulated. We strongly suspect the equity market is manipulated. We now know Libor is manipulated, but silver isn't, or gold isn't. No, but they leave gold alone. Oh, of course, gold just left to just. Are you kidding? Really? So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question. I think in the end it's a scandal. I understand from people on my site that live in the UK. I understand from reading their comments that it is a much bigger scandal in London than it is over here in the States. But in the end, it's probably more just further damning the credibility of the bankers than anything else.
Right. Well, why don't we talk about Europe a little bit here? The Spanish 10-year is just recently back above 7%. Last week we had Cyprus asking for a bailout. Merkel appears to be caving on euro bonds. Obviously, the situation appears to be worsening almost by the hour. And yet, silver and gold continue to correct and consolidate in the face of the escalating crisis. Is it just merely counterintuitive? People waiting, people not going to wake up until it's too late?
It's a good question. Regarding Europe, I'm still going to go with Jim Willey on this one. Jim has been saying for years that the stronger countries in Europe with less debt and stronger economies are going to branch off on their own. I think the term he's used is a Nordic euro. That's still, he's been saying that for years. People have originally scoffed at him. It's looking more and more realistic as time goes by. I still think that's probably how it's going to go. Maybe they'll carve it off into a northern euro or a southern euro, or the Greek will go back to drachma and the Italians will start issuing lira again and whatever. To me, that's still probably how it's all going to eventually play out. From here to there, we'll see. The European banks, if I understand it right, the European banks are different than the U.S. banks, and that a lot of times the U.S. banks are they hold their own collateral, and they're all individually collateralized. And the larger banks are too big to fail. They're all on opposite sides of credit default swaps. But the smaller banks, the regional banks, the local banks are not that way. In Europe, I read once, and I seem to understand it this way, that the banks are all collateralized amongst themselves. Bank A's collateral is with Bank B, and Bank B has taken that and put it with C. And they're all linked together. And so and that's why they can't allow really even any bank to fail. Well, eventually, how much money can you pump at it before it all falls apart? So it seems like just a waiting game, Doc, for something bad to happen there. As it relates to gold and silver, the biggest challenge, and we kind of touched on this earlier, silver in particular, is that there's just not a lot of, if the paper market is going to continue to set price, which hopefully it won't for a whole lot longer, but if the paper market's going to continue to set price, and if there's nobody in there actively taking the long side in paper, it's going to be pretty hard for it to go up regardless of how bad the headlines are. So silver may continue to drift sideways and gold may, but again, let's wait for the physical market to finally start really impacting the paper market, and then I think we'll both be astonished at how quickly they go up.
Right, and basically, I think we should encourage listeners that the cartel and the bullion banks, they might be winning the short-term battles, but they can't manipulate forever, basically. They can't. There's only so much physical supply, and free market forces will, in my opinion, eventually do what the CFTC is unable to.
Right. And you know what? At the risk of, I'm always leery of giving numbers because I feel like numbers sometimes are mind-numbing to the listener. But I just can't emphasize this enough. On the Commitment of Traders report, where the survey was taken on the 28th of February, the bank sector, the what we'll call the cartel sector in silver, was long about 34,000 contracts, and they were short 78,000 contracts. Okay, so the net difference is 44,000, about 44,500. Okay, as of the report, now that was when price was 37 and was looking to break out, and there was one day on the 28th when, man, we were all excited. They've smashed it since. As price has gone from 37 to 26, the amount of contracts that they're short has fallen from 78,000 down to 61. But the amount that they're long has gone from 34 up to 48 and a half. So, I mean, it's a tremendous net change on the back of what they are doing and how they are positioning themselves. And to be at a point now where the total net short position is only 12,000 contracts. If you go back to last April, when things were really starting to get away from, the total net short position was 5 times that. It was 67,000 contracts. And now it's only 12? I mean, we're down about as far as we're going to go.
And I think Ted Butler in his latest, he actually estimated that the total net short was 12,000, but JP Morgan's was, I think he estimated 16,000, meaning that the other bullion banks are actually net long compared to JP Morgan.
That's an excellent point, Doc. And when has that ever happened?
Not in my memory.
Exactly. And so all of a sudden, instead of all acting kind of collusively together, all of a sudden it's everybody against them. So anything that might cause JP Morgan to decide to no longer be in the silver suppression business, or maybe that's what the other banks are starting to anticipate. That's why they're willing to take them on and go against them where they never have in the past. I don't know, but something really funky is going on there. And the numbers, there's just no way that we are not very, very close to or have already achieved a bottom in silver. I mean, the numbers bear it out.
Right. All right, well, before we let you go, Turd, if you could, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your new daily podcast service?
Well, Doc, thank you. It's going to be great fun for me in particular, but I hope for everybody that joins. We just launched it last week. The website is one word, turdtalksmetals.com. I go on there. I try to do it every day. Every once in a while, I might take a vacation day, but it's about 20-minute wrap up every day. So that's one part of it, is me talking. I'm sure you're familiar with this as well, Doc. We can type volumes, and there's enough going on every day in gold and silver that it's pretty easy to come up with material, but that's the written media is just not my favorite. I've given I don't know how many seminars and other public presentations over the course of my professional life. I would much rather talk than type. And you can inflect your voice, and you can nuance, and you can get excited, and you can do all kinds of stuff. It's just so much easier to get your message across verbally, at least for me, than it is typing. And so I'm really hoping that the podcast media will be enjoyed by everybody. But what I really want to do, and I'm sure you've been afforded this same, I guess, type of access now, Doc, is because my site is popular, I now have the ability to go to some of the biggest names in metals. I mean, you just had an interview with Eric Sprott, right? I mean, right. Can you imagine a couple years ago being able to call up Sprott Asset Management and saying, "Hey, yes, I'd like to talk to Eric, please"?
Yeah, it almost seems surreal.
Yeah, and I think of the fact that all the people I now know, and it's only because all the people that I visit my site have given me this power. And so what the podcast site is designed to do is to return some of that access to them. Because what I really want to be able to set up are webinars and conference calls and chats and things like that with some of these big shots to give us regular Joes just a little more access, a little more access to their wisdom and knowledge. So anyway, so Turd Talks Metals is a subscription. It's only $15 a month. So it's not like we're looking to clean everybody's clocks with it. But I think it's going to be great fun, and the initial reviews have been good. So hopefully it'll continue to grow.
All right, well, thanks. Yeah, we definitely recommend the listeners check out Turd's new site, Turd Talks Metals, and his regular website as well, TFMetalsReport. Your site's a daily must-read for me when I'm able to and have time. So keep up the great work, TF, and thanks much for taking the time to talk with us today. We look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Well, thank you very much. And if I can plug what you guys, I got to take a second to plug you guys too, because there might be people listening to this that are regulars at my site that don't know Silver Doctors. I think what you guys do in terms of, I don't know how many posts you guys put up a day with all the relevant news. I can only handle about one or two, and it's mostly just my opinion. You guys do a great job of reading the headlines, posting what's significant, and putting it all out there. So I want to plug you guys too. You guys do a great job. But anyway, thank you also, though, for the platform and for wanting to talk. This has been fun.
Sounds good. Thanks, TF. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.
My pleasure. Anytime.